Hello and welcome to MEE Live. I'm Matilda Mallinson. It's Thursday, the 30th of April, 2026. Today, citizenship as a weapon of censorship. We're looking at the Gulf's Iran war crackdown. Bahrain has revoked the citizenship of dozens of people it accuses of sympathising with Iran and aiding foreign entities. At least 69 people have had their citizenship revoked, according to a directive by King Hamad bin Isa Khalifa, including family dependents of those accused. Bahrain does not generally allow dual citizenship. This means that the punishment renders many stateless, which is generally deemed illegal under international law for violating the fundamental human right to a nationality. But Bahrain is not a signatory of the conventions on statelessness. Campaigners told Middle East Eye that many of those named were Ajami, a term referring to Gulf communities whose ancestors historically migrated from southern Iran. The directive came a few days after the king met with Kuwait's foreign minister. Kuwait has been stripping citizenship from nationals for months in what campaigners have said affects hundreds of thousands, counting family members. Gulf states have come under bombardment since the outbreak of regional war on the 28th of February, when Iran retaliated to US-Israeli strikes by firing thousands of attacks at its neighbours. At least 3 people in Bahrain have been killed and scores wounded. The attacks have been accompanied by domestic crackdowns under national security claims. Joining me now is Bahraini activist Saeed Al-Wadai, director of Bahraini Institute for Rights and Democracy. He's with me in person as he is a political refugee living here in the UK. Wade, welcome to MEE Live. Now, if I'm correct in my understanding, you yourself had your Bahraini nationality revoked by the government. Can you tell us a little bit about what that actually means in real life, the impact of statelessness on a person?
Thank you so much for having me. I do remember the moments when I figured out that I am no longer Bahraini. I'm someone who was born in the country, my entire family there. This is the only country we know for generations. So the shock was for me is that there was no such a process to receive the news. There was no introduction, nothing. There was no court, no proceedings. I was just reading a press release by the government, and as I was scrolling by the names, I did find my name listed there. And the moment when I, just digesting this, my name is there, and the only nationality I got is Bahraini.
Did you think it was a mistake if you finding out that way?
I mean, it wasn't, but the shock is just to see the name is listed there and the consequences it would have. And the consequences meant to me at that time is that I have to start a journey as a stateless individual. And later I thought, okay, being in the UK, I'm still entitled to travel as a refugee with the refugee travel document, but the implication can be extremely serious. Later I had to have a daughter, a child, and sadly she was born as a stateless child as a consequence to the citizenship. So it doesn't just impact the individual, but also it impacts their children, their generations to come. So it's extremely serious implications. If someone is in Europe or in places where there is there will be a process, a route for a citizenship, then that's fine. But what if they are in the Middle East with no access to any other citizenship? Then it's catastrophic for generations to come.
And Saeed, so you and your daughter were both rendered stateless by this. Are we to understand then that in this latest crackdown, children in Bahrain will have been rendered stateless?
I'm devastated to learn that there are children which were born. So one of the families involves, a father just had a child, a few days old, still not even registered still going through the registrations process and so on. And that father lost his citizenship. Implication on that newly born baby is the same. There are families which are really, it's harrowing, because this time is even worse than what we experienced back in 2015, because now the implication is not going to be just on you as individual, but those which also carries your name. So whoever obtained the citizenship, if they are the target, then their children will lose it because they got it because of their father. And if they have a grandchildren, the grandchildren would also lose it. So we're dealing with devastation this time. So there is one case, is a Shia cleric, Sheikh Ibrahim al-Ansari, who 12 members of his family, so his daughters, his sons, his grandchildren, all of them, anyone simply who carries his name, have lost their citizenship.
Has there been any kind of due process for this? Have those who've lost their citizenship, have they faced a trial? Have they had a chance to appeal the accusations against them? Do they know the accusations against them?
They are, as the way how I learned about it back into 2015, the process is exactly the same. There is no indicator whatsoever, and the people are going to learn about it on social media or from the official channels. In this context, it was Bahrain King on 19th of April. He did meet with senior members of the government and told them that we got to review the definition of citizenship, and then who deserve it and who doesn't, and who betray the country. Later, next day, the cabinet met together to make sure that they're going to enforce the king's wishes in this. And then on 27th, then we've seen the first patch. Many of them are with the accusations of either it's related to the war. Many of them are simply has no connection. They did not even condemn the war. They did not comment on it. One of them is one of the most prominent architectures in the country, interior designer, one of the biggest names with her firm with 500,000 followers on Instagram, was a victim of this as well. Like, this is the only country she knew, and none of them went through any kind of a trial. And I strongly believe this wasn't, the due process is absolutely absent, and they have no right to appeal or challenge these decisions.
And if some of those who've been affected, as you say, haven't even been outspoken on the war on Iran, which is the reason given for this punishment, if they haven't been outspoken on that topic, why do you think they might have been targeted?
Two reasons. There is two common things between the 69 individuals which lost their citizenship. They all of them with no exception, they are from Iranian heritage or Iranian origin, which we call them Ajam in Arabic language. And secondly, they are all Shia. So this is the common thing between them. So it's not about what they commented in relation to the war, is they just being punished because of their faith, because of their race. And you could imagine what kind of devastating impact this would have on the entire society. And now anyone with the same race or with the same faith, they're going to be thinking about, oh yeah, this is just the start of what appears to us is a very dangerous campaign by the state.
Can you help us understand the political context in Bahrain that leads to this kind of, as you've described it, discrimination, ethnic discrimination of people of Iranian heritage, of Shia Muslims? Where is this tension, where is this fear of the government coming from?
Because what they're seeing is the Iranian government is the one which is retaliating against the U.S. bases and against some targets within Bahrain. And so, many of Bahrain population are from the Shia faith as well. So this is the same Shia faith in Iran. So there is this element, and then seeing them as being within Iranian origin, that could give just like the hatred, racist appealing that, oh yeah, we are being targeted by those Shia Iranians and we have some of them here. It's just like
So
collectively punish them.
Is this quite a new phenomenon that's very directly related to the war, or would you say that these practices of discrimination have deeper roots than just the current war?
It's a deeper one. I mean, between 2012 to 2019, the state's policy was revocation of citizenship, including exiles outside the country. And if we look into the 990 individuals, because we were counting each decision and following the names and looking into all of this, what we learned is the overwhelming majority of them are happen to be Shia. So the government could use the citizenship as a weapon to silence dissidents as well. So now you could imagine the situation. If you are a grandfather and decided to say, I'm against the American-Israeli war on Iran, and you face that you're going to be stripped of your citizenship, you're going to be deported, your children will be impacted, and if you happen to have grandchildren, then they will be also deported. So it is this level of fear of just like going in not just legal limbo, but you're going to have to face extremely difficult decisions. And this is already tearing families apart, let alone seeing what kind of thing, like, you know, if I was hearing this morning from some of those families, even primary students' children, they have only 2 weeks to finish their exams. These children now, they might be asked just to leave the country, just to find a place to go to.
Yeah, what will these families do? Those who have been rendered stateless, can they continue living in Bahrain with fewer rights? What choices do they have now?
Sadly, they don't even let them to stay in the country. So my understanding is over the past 3 days, they've been called to present every single ID they have. Every single ID, whether it's their passport, their driving license, their identity, national identity card, all of this got to be handed back to the state. And then in return, the state would give them a travel document that could last for only one trip. It seems as we speak now, they are offering them a route to Iran through Oman. So they will let them go to Oman, and then they could find their final destination, whether it would be Iran, and then it would be up to Iran or up to any other state, whether they would be able to accept them, although they are not their nationals. So Bahrain is throwing out its own problems, not to take responsibility, but also to throw this responsibility on someone else.
And it's the government of Bahrain is expelling people to Iran.
They are, but they cannot. There is no direct route to go to Iran directly, and there is no diplomatic relationship. So they are taking Oman as a middle country, and those individuals, even like, say for example, if they want to come to Europe, I think it will be impossible for them to come to Europe because of the kind of a travel document they're going to be given to them.
And certainly the situation in Europe right now is increasingly difficult for people seeking sanctuary. How do you think that the international community should be responding to this phenomenon where Bahrain, and as we'll explore later in the show, some other states are revoking citizenship? What kind of response is needed?
There must be a call out and direct condemnation to this action, because at the end of the day, if Bahrain feels that there is no consequences, no implication to its action, then that will embolden them to go even faster and more ruthless. And that's what we learned. And especially like there is a bigger responsibility for three important allies to Bahrain. I think the first one would be the United States, the second would be Britain, and the third would be the European Union. They all claim that they would be they are supporter of human rights, but when it comes into allies like Bahrain, you will see their mouth is zipped and they're not gonna say anything about this. And as we speak, that there is no condemnation, there is no even a comment by any of those diplomats.
Saeed Al-Wadai, thank you so much for joining us today and taking us through the situation.
Thank you for having me.
The war has also been accompanied by a domestic crackdown by Bahraini authorities. Rights groups have recorded over 200 people arrested since the war began, but they say the actual number may be higher due to enforced disappearances. Mohammed al-Moussawi, aged 32, died in custody last month after being forcibly disappeared, along with several of his friends in connection with the Iran war. Moussawi's corpse had bruises and marks all across the face and bodies, photograph and footage seen by Middle East Eye. The death sparked angry protest as demonstrators accused authorities of torturing him to death. Now, a few days ago, investigators in Bahrain charged an intelligence officer over assault during the interrogation leading to Moussawi's death. Here to discuss this wider historical, geographical, political crackdown and the weaponisation of citizenship is Mariam Al-Khawaja, who is a leading voice for human rights and political reform in Bahrain and the wider Gulf region. Mariam, welcome to MEE Live. Now, you yourself have been imprisoned and criminalised in Bahrain for championing democracy. Your father is facing life imprisonment for this fight. How concerned are you about the increase in political imprisonment in Bahrain and the wider Gulf that has accompanied this regional war?
I mean, look, let me start by saying that this is not new for us, right? When we're talking about crackdown, when we're talking about oppression, when we're talking about the measures that the governments are taking in the GCC, especially with the sectarian targeting, none of that is new. But I think what I am concerned about is how heavy-handed the crackdown is. The Bahrainis especially, the Bahrain regime especially, has been in the past couple of years trying to promote this idea that they were getting better, that things were, not getting better in the sense of better human rights, but more of we're in a stalemate, we're not going to arrest as many people as we have been, we're not going to continue to kill people on the streets and so on. That had taken a bit of a pause. And now we're seeing a return to that, to see someone tortured to death in Bahrain, who, by the way, is a distant relative of mine, who was tortured to death merely days after he was taken from a checkpoint with his friends, or to see, hundreds of arrests during a very short period. That's what's concerning about how heavy-handed this crackdown has been.
Now, on this question of citizenship being revoked, Saeed referred to it during his interview. But can you just talk us through when and where we have seen the Bahraini government use citizenship as a weapon of censorship in the past?
I mean, look, as a daughter of activists, I was born stateless. And I know many other people who were born stateless as well. I didn't receive Bahraini citizenship until 2001 when my family traveled back to Bahrain. And there are, time and time again, the Bahraini regime has been trying to create this narrative that, people like me and my family and so many others like us, especially those who are of the Shia faith, that we're not indigenous to the country, that we were brought in as guests, or that we came from Iran or Iraq or whatever it was. But if you can see the painting, actually, that's right behind me, that's a picture of the Al Khawaja Mosque, which predates the Al Khalifa's coming into Bahrain. My great-great-grandfather built that before the Al Khalifas violently took over our country and started ruling it, and have violently ruled it since then, which is why there is quite a large portion of the Bahraini population, the indigenous population, that believe that they are occupied by the Al Khalifas. They don't believe that this is a legitimate rule, and they know that the Al Khalifas are not indigenous to the country. So I think it's also the juxtaposition of a family that is considered to be occupying Bahrain now using citizenship revocation against the indigenous population of the country, which really is mind-blowing. But when you look at the last few decades in Bahrain and how the Bahraini regime, the ruling family, has been working very hard at changing the demographics of the country. We had a Shia majority of the population in Bahrain, and now they're saying that the Shia only make up about 50-60%, whereas before it was about 75%, which means that they are successfully demographically changing the population in Bahrain from a Shia majority to trying to making them a minority in their own country. And for this, I mean, it's important to understand that when it comes to these issues, It's not because the Al Khalifas are, devout Sunni Muslims and this is about Sunni Islam and Shia Islam and it's a historic problem and issue. No, religion and sectarianism is being used as a tool to divide and conquer. The Al Khalifas know that by setting up the minority Sunnis in the country against the majority Shias, that's one of the ways that they continue to rule and present themselves as the protectors of the country, as the protectors against sectarianism. But what it really is about is economic control and political control.
Right, and how unique is this situation you're describing to Bahrain? Obviously, these tactics, general tactics of political oppression, divide and conquer, these are recurring themes everywhere in the world. But if we look at the wider Gulf region, the royal family's announcement came a few days after King Hamad met with Kuwait's foreign minister. And Kuwait has for months been stripping citizenship from nationals. The process appears to have accelerated since the war on Iran begun. We've just seen high-profile journalist Ahmad Shihab el-Din's citizenship revoked over Iran war posts. Could these situations be connected?
I mean, I think, look, the GCC loves to learn from each other. I've always said that they like to use the attempt or a trial and success methodology. So to see how one government uses a tool of oppression, and then if that doesn't garner too much international backlash, too much international attention, you'll see other GCC countries that implement the same tool or the same tool of oppression, right? And so I wouldn't say that the Bahrainis are following in the footsteps of the Kuwaitis, because as you know, Sayyid Ahmed has already said before me, and I can repeat again, that the tool of citizenship revocation has been a tool that has been used by the Al Khalifa regime for decades, for a very long time. Like I said, I'm 38 now, and I was born stateless 38 years ago. So you can see that it's been happening for a very long time. The question around the revocation in Kuwait, of course, is also a very serious matter. The numbers are mind-boggling as to how many people have lost their citizenship in Kuwait. The way that it's being done, where it's collective punishment. So it doesn't matter if you were the one who got citizenship or not. It doesn't matter if you had any say or even were any part of the process of gaining citizenship in Kuwait. As long as you're related to someone who's being accused of having received it in the wrong way or whatever it was, then you are also being punished for that. And so this type of collective punishment, which we're also seeing in Bahrain, of denying even the children and the grandchildren from citizenship, is something that should be an alarm and a red flag to everyone. And we need to see some form of real international response and accountability for what is happening in Bahrain and in Kuwait. I mean, Kuwait also has a very specific situation with the Bidoon. The situation of the Bidoon has been horrific for a very long time. And that does set Bahrain apart from Kuwait a little bit. So there is a bit of a political difference there. But of course, like I said, the GCC loves to learn from each other when it comes to crackdown tools.
It sounds like, in your view, the war on Iran and the geopolitical crisis breaking out is being used by controlling oppressive governments to oppress minorities in particular further, and to crack down on freedoms, on freedom of expression, on protest. Is that the case, that the war in Iran has become sort of a smokescreen for these sinister domestic practices?
Absolutely. I mean, look, when we talk about Bahrain and how it's done things, the crackdown that has mainly, I would say 99% of the crackdown in Bahrain since 2011 has targeted the Shia indigenous community in Bahrain, right? And with the Al Khalifas, what we've seen since the 1920s is that they always use whatever they think is the international threat of the day that they can use as a smokescreen for their crackdown. So before it was Nasser socialists, and then it became communists, and then it became Iranian agents and terrorists and so on. And that's why you also see like a lot of activists face charges of terrorism now when it comes to Bahrain and also in other GCC countries. And so this use of, where are people's loyalty, this creation of this narrative around loyalty, and if you're not loyal to the ruling families, then you're not loyal to your country, etc. They've really been pushing that narrative forward in Bahrain and other places of you're either with the ruling family or you're against us. And if you're against us, you're going to pay a price. And we've been seeing this again and again. So definitely we've seen the war on Iran being used as an excuse and, as you said, as a smokescreen to try and justify a lot of these acts of oppression that have been ongoing the past few months. But I think it's also important to mention, Sayyid Ahmed was talking about how one of the things that the people who lost their citizenship in Bahrain, all of them are Ajam, which means that, generally it means that they are of Iranian origin, but that's not necessarily always the case, right? I would expand that a little bit and talk even about my own family. My mom's family originally are indigenous Bahraini. They were kicked out of Bahrain many generations ago to Iran. When they then returned to Bahrain several generations later, they were considered Ajam. And so there is also that mix. I mean, a lot of Bahrainis have been forced out of Bahrain over the past decades to Iraq, to Iran, to other places. And then some of them have at some points returned, but were then considered to not be indigenous Bahrainis, which is not factual. And so I think that's also something that's important to take into consideration. And of course, a lot of these people have lived in Bahrain for generations. And the idea that they can just lose citizenship overnight for no real good reason, no due process, is horrifying.
Is this working as a tool of censorship and control? Is this revocation of citizenship working? I mean, you've just described a pretty alarming situation where not just those who speak out, but anyone related to them can be punished with loss of citizenship, a seriously severe punishment that basically means the revocation of rights. Is this effectively scaring people into towing the line, into silence?
I mean, of course it's scaring people. We've been seeing, people putting out public pledges of loyalty to the king, saying, me on behalf of my family, so and so, I pledge allegiance to the king of Bahrain, etc., etc. And we've been seeing this from businesses, we've been seeing this from families, we've been seeing this from different mosques, and so on. And this is because people know that, and we've been seeing this since 2011 also, that it's not just enough to stay silent. You have to actually be loud in pledging support and saying that you're actually loyal to the regime, loyal to the king, loyal to the ruling family. And so it's this necessity of, going out there and pledging that loyalty to the regime. Now, there are some people who are doing that, and we've been seeing that over the past weeks. And some people speak on behalf of their whole family because they know that it's very unlikely that any member of their family is going to come out and say, no, actually, I don't have loyalty to the king. And so they take this as an opportunity to speak up, on behalf of their entire family and so on. But then there are others who this is going to make them more angry. And I think, Bahrain, we're in a very, very difficult economic situation. It's not sustainable politically, economically. The situation in Bahrain is not sustainable. And so we're looking at a situation where it's a matter of time before we see some form of uprising, some form of protest, some form of breakdown, because the status quo cannot continue. As much as the Khalifas are hoping that they're going to be able to hold on to control, I don't think that the current situation is sustainable. And I think we will, at some point, sooner or later, we're going to see some form of explosion inside Bahrain.
Mariam Al-Khawaja, thank you for your time. And for everyone tuning in, thank you for being with us. Make sure you're following us on social media at Middle East Eye. You can email meelive@middleeasteye.net and hit subscribe to stay on top of all our coverage.